Light Tomorrow with Today. Elizabeth Browning. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I am your host, Shamiza Ali. Our topic tonight is the state of the mining sector, that is gold, bauxite, and manganese, and plans for future development. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narain from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh, who is a distinguished political and social scientist.
Thank you very much, Shamiza, and welcome to our listeners.
Welcome, Dr. Tara. Our panelists tonight are Professor Muniram Budu and Dr. Ganga Ramdas.
Hello, Shamiza. Hello, Tara.
Hello, everyone. Nice.
Our guest tonight is the Minister of Natural Resources, the Honorable Vickam Bharat. Good evening. Welcome,
Thank you,
everyone. Dr.
Shamiza.
Tara,
Good
please
night,
go ahead. Good night.
All right.
Dr.
Thank
Tara.
you. Thank you very much, Shamiza, and welcome to our panelist, Professor Muniram Budu. I think you met him already, Minister. He's a professor of civil engineering and architecture at Arizona University. You have Ganga Prasad, who is head of Department of Economics and International Relations at Lincoln University, Pennsylvania. And both of these gentlemen have traveled extensively worldwide. They have a lot of experience, and so we are very happy to have them on a regular basis on this panel. Before we go into the subject per se, we don't want to talk about oil. That is overworked. We want to go into gold, and diamond, and manganese. But I saw in the news that Apple bought 100,000 carbon credits. So I don't know if that fall under your portfolio, but that is good news for Guyana. If you care to comment on that briefly, and then I'm going to ask you another question unrelated to that.
Good night, Dr. Tara. Sorry, I didn't get you clear. Can you repeat,
No, what I'm
please?
saying that Apple, the tech company Apple, bought 100,000 carbon credits from Guyana. It was reported in the news, I think earlier this week or last week. If you care to comment for that, is part of the LCDS program.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tara. Let me say good night to Shamiza and the other panelists, Dr. Ganga and Professor Budu. I'm happy to be back on this forum where we get to speak a little more on natural resources. And let me also say a special good evening to all our viewers and also listeners, those who are joining. And a special good night to my very good friend Dave, who has been the main sponsor, I believe, for this program for a while now. As it relates to the question, Dr. Tara, I'm sure you're aware that this started since when our vice president was then president in the early 2000s, when the Forest Low Carbon Development Strategy was launched in 2008, 2009, and we were benefited from an agreement with the Kingdom of Norway, a bilateral agreement with the Kingdom of Norway, earning Guyana over 200 million US dollars, mostly for us to bring development to the indigenous community throughout the countries, to improve the communication between the coast and the hinterland communities. as well as to develop renewable energy. And then after that, subsequently, the expanded low carbon development strategy of 2030 was launched by President Ali in 2021. And from that, we have already benefited through carbon credit deal with his corporation, which minimum of 750 million US for 40% of our carbon credit. And I mentioned only recently we signed another deal with Apple. It is not as big as the Hess Corporation, but because it is such a reputable company, Apple is such a reputable company, it is good for Guyana and it is good for promoting our forests and to generate more interest in the sale of carbon credit for Guyana. As you're aware, Guyana is the only country in the world that would have signed a jurisdictional carbon credit deal, and that's the one with Hess Corporation that was signed a few years back, from which we have committed to ensuring that at least 15% goes towards development in indigenous communities. And we have seen the transformation of those indigenous communities, over 240 communities benefiting from the sale of carbon credit. We have seen a transformation. We have seen the amount of projects being undertaken by these communities, especially those economic in nature, which generate revenue for those communities and as well create employment. So that has been a real success story for Guyana. And I think we need to applaud and to show appreciation to President Jagdeo at that time, who started um, to highlight the value of Guyana's forests and to prove to the world that forest is worth more standing than dead. Because we have always known that forest is worth more dead than alive, because we can earn through the export of logs and wood products, we can cut for mining and cut for industrial use. But we are trying to prove to the world that the forest can actually work more standing than dead. And I think as a small country, we've been contributing significantly towards the showing the world how valuable forest is towards the fight against climate change and how it is actually helping to save the world. As you're aware, there are only two major standing forests in the world. That is in the Congo Basin and in the Amazon Basin, where we are. So it is actually a global asset. It has become quite a global asset. And COP30 in Belém, Brazil, later this year, we want the forest to be highlighted more, the enough emphasis being placed on the role of the forest, our position. That has been our fight to show, our mission to show how valuable our forest is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Minister. Thank you for that. Now, gold, at many years ago or some years ago, gold, the primary export from Guyana. It took over from sugar, but now oil, of course, supersede that. But there has been reports, constant reports of gold smuggling. There has been tremendous hemorrhage under declaration of gold. For example, we have been told that the U.S. is able to determine that a particular company in Guyana was able to smuggle out over 10 kilograms of gold, and that might have robbed the country over $50 million in revenue. I can't 50 million Guyana or 50 million US, but maybe you can clarify that. But can you say what steps the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission is taking to prevent this hemorrhage of gold? monitoring system. How is it being policed? If you can throw some light on that.
Okay, thank you. As we know it now, the price of gold has been the highest ever right now. It's close to 3,400 US dollars per ounce. So what we have seen recently is the reinvestment by miners and mining company, especially in the gold mining sector, due to the high price of gold. So we're basically seeing a revitalization of the gold mining sector, which took a hit, I must say, from 2016 right up to a few years ago. So I would say comfortably that the sector is back on track. 2024 compared to 2025, we are way above that. It speaks to increase production and declaration. It also speaks to the incentives and investment being made by government in the mining sector, particularly the gold mining sector. And I think I mentioned on this program before that the mining sector alone employs over 30,000 Guyanese, and that the oil and gas sector, even when we reach maximum production, may never employ that amount of Guyanese, mainly because of the nature of the industries. The oil and gas sector is more capital intensive, whereas the mining sector is more labor intensive. And then in Guyana, our people are more comfortable in the mining sector. Many of them have been doing this for their entire life. They're skilled in it. And also, many of our indigenous people are engaged in gold mining. Many indigenous communities engaged in gold mining. And as a result of that, our government, since taking office in August of 2020, we have embarked on incentivizing, providing incentives for the sector, investing in infrastructure, investing in technical support for the gold sector. For example, we have invested, GGMC alone annually invests over $3 billion in the maintenance of hinterland roads, mining, logging roads, that is. And that is only the Guyana Geology and Mines. Of course, the regional bodies invest. The Ministry of Public Works also invests a lot in maintaining and developing new roadways so that not only do miners have access to land, but the accessibility to the land is available as well. Added to that, we have ensured that we remove the VAT placed by the APNU AFC on equipment and machinery in the mining and the agriculture and the logging sector. We have removed that VAT. We're probably one of the only country in the world, one of the few countries in the world that charge no tax on fuel presently. This has been ongoing for a few years now, where there's no tax on fuel. So everyone across all sectors benefit from it, including miners. We have reduced the final tax on miners. We have taken away the tributary tax. So there have been many incentives. Added to that, we have allocated many mining concession, especially to small miners over the last few years. So we no longer have the issue of the medium scale or the larger miners taking advantage of the small scale miners, but they have access to their own land now. Whether it's a claim or whether it's a block, they have access to their own land that they can mine on freely without an issue. So we have seen an increase in mining activities, especially in gold, in production as well as declaration, as a result of a number of measures being taken by GGMC, Ministry of Natural Resources, and the government of Guyana to ensure that we curb raiding or illegal mining, that we ensure that production mirrors or declaration mirrors production, so we know what is produced and that it is declared. We have taken the Guyana Gold Board, offices of the Guyana Gold Board, to Region 1 in Port Kaituma, to Region 7 in Bartica, to Region 8 in Mahdia in Region 8, in Marudi in Region 9, and then we have the main office in Guyana. We have a number of licensed traders. Now, the difference between gold traders and gold dealers is that gold traders, we have about probably almost 50 gold traders across the country. They are licensed to buy gold from miners, but they are not licensed to export the gold out of the country. They buy and then they sell back to the ones who are licensed to export, which is just a few, or the Guyana Gold Board. So we have many of them across the country, especially in inland locations, where they can purchase the gold from the miners and then sell to the Guyana Gold Board. That is in addition to the amount of gold board offices that are spread across the country. And also the dealers themselves, they had and regions, the mining areas that buy gold on that has been a complaint in the past that there is no one in some areas to buy gold from the miners, legitimate buyers, that is. So we have increased that. Our monitoring has increased tremendously in collaboration with the police, in collaboration with the customs, GRA, because it's a multi-agency approach to ensure that we man our borders too. And as you, all of us here are Guyanese, you know how difficult it is to man the borders of our country, mainly because of the terrain and our limited resources at this point in time. So that has been a real task for us. We've been working to improve together with the army and the many other agencies to have ensured that we have proper border control, especially with the Venezuela matter. We have really stepped up that monitoring, I must say. So these are just some of the things that we have started to do.
Mhm.
We have had many exercise by GGMC where we check each location on a regular basis. We check their production sheet, their receipts of sale. All of these are ongoing. Let me just close up on this note that on the mining side too, what we have started to do is to update our mineral inventory, Guyana's mineral inventory. Unfortunately, this hasn't been done for about 40 years now, mainly because of the cost of doing the exercise. So whatever mineral mapping map that we have now, it is one that was generated a long time ago. And you can imagine then we didn't have the kind of technology and equipment that we do now. So we have contracted a US company that have already started this process. Soon we will have the fixed wing aircraft with the specialized equipment flying over the mining districts, collecting data so that that can be analyzed and we can develop a new mineral mapping that can point us to where there are greater possibilities of mineralization. And it's not only for gold, it's for bauxite, it's for diamonds, it's for manganese. In a more definitive way that we have in this area, it will also better position
Dr.
of
Tara,
knowing
Yeah,
where
go
there are
ahead.
we're having a little bit of a technical
greater
difficulty
sign
hearing Minister Barrett.
of mineralization. So that program is ongoing. On finally on the question, the other part of the question that was asked with regards to the Mohammeds and the allegation, or not the allegation, because there enough evidence for the U.S. to sanction the Mohammeds for gold smuggling, money laundering, um, So, as mentioned by the US, there are enough evidence. That is why the sanction was instituted against the Mohammeds for gold smuggling and robbing the Guyana government of 50 million US dollars. I just wanted to confirm that it's 50 million US dollars or equivalent to 11 billion Guyana dollars in taxes and revenue. And this is leaving out the taxes that should have been paid, duty that should be paid on the Lamborghini, the famous Lamborghini, and the other sports equipment. This is just gold we're dealing with here. And this was done over a period of time because I heard an interview. I heard a reporter ask the one of the Mohammeds about this very issue, and he was trying to actually dodge the question and to sidetrack the journalists to say that it is impossible to smuggle 10,000 kilos of gold out of the country. That I, as Minister of Natural Resources, sign off on these things and GRA sign off on these things. But no one said that 10,000 kilograms of gold was smuggled at one time. Even the US said it was over a period of time that this gold was smuggled out of the country. Um, so it is 50 million US dollars, which is equivalent to 11 billion Guyana dollars. So that is the real figure
All
that was
right.
given.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. I pass you over now to Professor Buru. You have any
Yeah.
comments and questions for the Minister on the gold sector?
Minister, good to see you again. I have some questions in which I would like you to give me some short answers. And I would like to follow up on what Dr. Singh has pointed out about smuggling. I told you the last time you were here that I did some work in the Tibuku hydroelectric project in the Mazaruni, where I saw amphibious aircraft landing and picking up gold at that time and diamond, right? Now, as a percentage of declared gold, how much you think is smuggled?
Well, that I don't think there's an answer to that question because if I had known how much gold or if gold is smuggled to Guyana, then my job would have been to stop it and to ensure they don't happen. So that is why this call is referred to as smuggle gold because it is done illegally without anyone knowing. So I wish I could answer the question directly, but if I answer the question directly, it means that I'm complicit because I know and I'm not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So I just went through a slew of measures that we're taking to ensure that we curb illegal mining and whatever smuggling exists. But I'm not sure anyone because that is why it's called smuggling. It's done illegally without anyone, the authorities knowing that is being done.
I did ask this question to a minister in the previous government, that's in 2018, and he said at least twice the amount that is declared is smuggled.
And you should have asked him what is he doing as a minister about it.
Well, I did, and he said, "Why our country is very big, we can't look after everything." Right? All right.
Okay.
Let me continue. How many foreign companies and their nationalities are engaged in mining in each of, say, gold, diamond, bauxite, and manganese in Guyana?
All right. So in Guyana, there's a regulated small scale mining, and there is the medium scale mining, and then there's the large mines. So medium and small scale mining is reserved strictly for Guyanese. So GGMC cannot allocate any mining concession, small and mining concession to foreigners. It can only be allocated to Guyanese. So anytime you hear someone is engaged in small or medium scale mining in Guyana, it is a Guyanese. Maybe they've partnered with an international investor. We have nothing against that, but the property remains in the name of the Guyanese because it cannot be awarded to a foreigner. But foreigners can engage in investment in large scale operation, as is happening in Guyana. For example, the one producing gold mine, which was started by a Canadian company, Guyana Gold Fields, and later they sold to a Chinese company, Zijing. That is the only large scale gold producer or gold mine that we have in Guyana right now. The only producing one. However, we have a few that are being built now. We have one in Region 7, which is called the Oko West. That's the area, but it's being developed by a Canadian and a Brazilian investor. They've joined together and they're developing that mine. That mine will probably be one of the biggest gold mine in this part of the world once they start producing, maybe in another 2 years from now. And then, as you're aware, we have the Oh My gold mine back in the days. Now they've restarted exploration activities there. There is still a significant deposit there, and that is a Canadian company.
Mhm.
In the bauxite large scale, we have one US company, we have one Chinese company. Um, in logging, for example, we have a few foreign companies, but majority of the stakeholders in the logging sector are Guyanese, are locals, because we award forestry concessions to locals. So again, in mining, once it's small and medium scale mining, it is Guyanese for sure, 100% Guyanese.
Mhm.
Large scale, foreigners can invest in large scale mining in Guyana.
What about manganese?
Yes, we have one manganese producing company, which is the same company as the bauxite group of companies.
Mhm.
So they are actually producing the bauxite and linden, and they're producing the manganese in Matthews Ridge, Region 1 as well.
Now, do you have enough well-trained, incorruptible inspectors at the sites of these large companies?
I really like how you frame your questions, Professor. I can understand training, incorruptible.
Mhm.
I may have to, I may have to decline from answering that because I may be either trying to degrade personnel who are working, because at the end of the day, it depends on individuals, right? Their own integrity, their own mindset. They are bringing the training, and you or I cannot vouch for a single individual because I may very well have good officers, but then when you send them in the interior and they're enticed or they're induced into taking a bribe or turning a blind eye, sometimes these things happen. But whenever it happens and it's reported, we deal with it. But to say that everyone is corrupt, I know you're not saying that, but to say that everyone is corrupt, I don't think that would be
Mhm.
fair for me to say that,
Mhm.
because there's some very good officers too that go out there and that perform. It's not easy working in interior locations either. Right? They leave the families, they go out in the outstations, they work there for a month, 6 weeks, and then they come back. So it's not always easy for them. I'm not making an excuse. Of course, my job as Minister of Natural Resources to ensure that I ensure that my officers they perform in their tasks and duty in an honest and a fair manner. But sometimes it still comes back to an individual, which none of us really have control over. In terms of training, I can tell you safely that most, if not all, of our officers at GGMC are very trained. And they undergo continuous training at the mining school, which is a GGMC, because they must be trained in order to lend technical support to miners, because their task is not only to police mining and to do enforcement, but is also to lend technical support to miners, especially in the method of mining, the recovery, health and safety, which is critical. So yes, I would say most, if not all, of our officers are trained to work in the sector, to help miners, to police the mining, to do enforcement. But in terms of integrity, I do hope and I implore upon them most of the times that integrity is critical, honesty is critical, and doing a job in a fair way is critical. But as I mentioned, it comes down to an individual.
Yeah. Are there plans to improve, say, value-added processing and products, for example, such as refining gold or gold products in particular, and manganese? Manganese is very important for cathodes in these lithium batteries. So, is there any downstream products
Well,
you're
well,
trying to
yes, we've
invest?
been looking. We've been looking a while now at the possibility of having a gold refinery in Guyana, but some of the challenges
Mm,
associated with that. One is the energy or the power needed to run a refinery. It requires a lot of energy. Right now, we don't have the amount of energy that's required to set up a refinery in Guyana. Maybe at a later stage we will. And even if we do now, the cost of energy right now is very expensive. It will not make a refinery in Guyana economical. So that's one issue. The second issue would be the production. Now, for a country producing less than 1 million ounces of gold, it might be very difficult for an investor to make a wise decision and say, you know what, I'm going to establish a refinery in Guyana. Maybe at a later date when our production is higher and building a refinery is feasible, is economical,
mm,
then we can seriously speak with investors who want to do that. But we really need to work on increasing our production to make the investment attractive. Um, in the other sectors, for example, in bauxite, as you know, we had a alumina refinery back in the
mm,
days in Linden. But again, the cost of power and um, the production at that time render it almost useless in terms of refining the products and being profitable at the same time. And
mm,
then, of course, back in those days, the gross mismanagement of the sector and the
mm,
resources too under the PNC administration. So we have been working with both sides, and I'm happy to say that when we took over government in 2020, bauxite production was just above 400,000 tons annually. This year in 2025, we're expected to produce over 4 million tons. So we have moved from 400,000 tons to 4 million tons in 5 years. That is quite an achievement, generating hundreds of jobs in Linden, for example, and in the Demerara River in the Bonseco, where we have the other bauxite mine. So we have engaged the company. They're interested in new deposits that we have in Region 10, and the president have said to them in no uncertain terms that giving a new or awarding a new deposit is tied to value added. If you're willing to invest in setting up an alumina refinery, then we may be willing to award a new deposit for you or to you, because obviously you're investing a lot in that. So we are still in talks with the bauxite company to work on the possibility of having an alumina refinery in Guyana now that we are working on monetization and utilization of our gas resources,
mm,
which will make that possible now in terms of energy again, because an alumina or an aluminum refinery requires a lot of energy, as you will know, because you're a man in
mm,
the sector too.
mm,
So that those have been some of the issues in the past why we haven't truly moved to value added in gold, for example, the low production compared to other countries. Because
mm,
many countries are producing, like Dominican Republic, produce way more than Guyana. There are countries in Africa that produce way more than Guyana, and still they don't have a refinery. There are just a few around the world, and also the high demand for energy and the cost of operation and in bauxite. But manganese, our production again is not that to that extent where it will demand moving towards value added. I see bauxite, us moving in that direction with regards to refining bauxite into alumina sometime in the near future.
yeah. I think that's the way to go because you guys are producing less than 1% of the gold in the world, so it's not going to be easy for company to invest in gold
Mm.
processing in Guyana. Now, are these companies using modern mining methods and contribute to local capacity building and community development?
So yes, the large scale company definitely we hold them to very high standard because these are the foreign investors. We hold them to very high standards when it comes to the environment, which is very key. For example, the large scale miners are not allowed to use mercury. Even the new small scale, sorry, even the new medium scale mining operations now, we are not engaging, we're not allowing them to use mercury, but to use other technology and other method
Mhm.
of extracting the gold. The large scale company, they're not using mercury. They have, and they must set up a processing plant on site as well too.
Mhm.
So, in terms of training, right now we have the Oko West project, as I mentioned earlier. They're looking for 1,500 workers right now to
Mm.
build out that mine, which is not too far from Bartica. For those of you who know, may help you to understand where it is. We worked with them to establish a training center in Bartica where they're training Guyanese in Bartica, and then they employ them to work in the mine. Bauxite and the Manganese company have been doing the same thing because, for example, with the Manganese company in Region 1, Machus Ridge area, they have an issue with finding skilled workers, semi-skilled workers. So they have been training workers, some from Region 10, some from other regions, Region 4, and take them to Region 1 in order to work, especially in the skill, semi-skill area. So there are a number of training and in the oil and gas sector that has been an ongoing process of training Guyanese, building capacity. And I'm sure you're aware too that there are many Guyanese who have the skill, who have the experience, who have been engaged in these activities for 30, 40 years, but many of them are not certified. So we're trying to ensure that we correct that now by having Guyanese who are skilled and who are experienced, have them certified because without proper certification, sometimes they cannot gain employment, especially with large scale foreign companies. So that has been an ongoing process. In terms of health and safety, we have been very strict on that, especially with the gold company doing underground mining now. It is even more critical to ensure that health and safety is of paramount, and as I mentioned earlier, the environment.
Dr. Tara, we will take a
All
quick
right.
break at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
We will
Okay,
be
go
right
ahead.
back after this message. Dr. Tara, please
Okay,
go ahead.
um, Dr. Ganga,
Thank you,
your
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Honorable Minister, nice to have you here. Thanks for the update. Um, there is no doubt that there is extensive operations in terms of gold production. Now, can you explain the type of technology that is used, especially with regard to the mining? Is it horizontal? Is it vertical? Or is it open pits? That's the first question I would like you to address. And then relate that to how the indigenous peoples participate in the production process of gold.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ganga, for that question. And we do mostly open pit alluvial mining, especially at a small and medium scale level. There are some small, medium scale mining operation in Guyana where they do hard rock mining, but it's the same open pit, but they include blasting and crushing. So that is our main method of mining, even by the large scale company, except for Zijing. Um, that company now is permitted to do underground mining, which has started about a year ago or so. And to date, that has been going well. I can tell you that I personally went underground to look at the operation, to look at the safety, to look at the lighting, the ventilation. And I can say from a very informed perspective that it is world class. And that is why I went to myself and Minister Ben actually drove into that underground mine. And it is world class. Anything that you see around the world, it can be compared to that. So I can vouch for that personally because I've actually been into that mine. Outside of that, as I mentioned, is mostly open pit, alluvial mining. There are some operations where they're hard rock mining, depending on which region or the terrain they're operating, because you will find that in region 7 in particular, the medium scale miners are engaged in more hard rock mining because of the geology of that area. In region 1, it may be different. So it varies based on the different regions. We have seen an increase. I can tell you, we have seen a tremendous increase in mining by the indigenous communities. There have always been mining being done by our Amerindian brothers and sisters, but now they are actually investing as village, as miners within the communities. They're investing in their equipment and they're conducting their own mining. However, in some villages, they do allow, as we say in the mining terms, coastlanders, or they do allow people from outside of the village to go and mine on their village land. But it must be done with no objection from the village council, because that is the only way the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission will allow or permit a miner who is not a villager to go and mine on title village land. There must be an objection and an agreement between the village and that miner. And I'll give you an example. There is an Amerindian community close to Bartica that is called Batavia. In Batavia, we have a quarry that is operating right now, a stone quarry, producing aggregate. But before that license was issued, there were several meetings between the investor, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, and the village itself to consult with the villagers to ensure that they're comfortable and they're okay with mining in their community, and also for the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs to oversee the agreement between the investor and the village so that it is done fairly and it is done mutually with mutual interests. So that is the process in which we go about issuing permit for people to actually mine in a title Amerindian village. But what we have seen, as I mentioned too, is a lot of villages engaging in gold mining now, which is good because it speaks to the development in the community. It shows that our Amerindian brothers and sisters are being engaged or engaging in gold mining and other economic activities other than agriculture, as we've known from the past that they're mostly engaged in agriculture. But today we see our brothers and sisters in hinterland communities engaging in mining as well, which is very profitable in some cases. And that has brought significant development to many of those communities. For example, again, there's a community close to Bartica called Carao, an Amerindian community. They have a few operations, mining operations there, and that has benefited the company, the village, sorry, tremendously. Because many of these miners, when they go in, they develop the roadways. Obviously, they pay royalty to village council. They help with development in the community. They also help with training of villagers who work with them. So that has been a real plus, a real positive in the mining sector, and especially in indigenous communities too.
Recently, it
Thank you.
was, thank you, Minister. Recently, it was reported that there was a limitation of $25,000 of equipment that the indigenous miner could use. Is, can you explain that? The, the
I'm
financial
not sure. I'm not.
invest at the recent
Yeah,
conference in the press.
I'm not sure how recent you or what you're speaking of, Dr. Ganga, but since I took over as Minister of Natural Resources, I don't know of any restriction when it comes to indigenous communities investing in mining. Because I've seen many of these communities purchasing dredges, purchasing excavators, and they're engaged in the mining activities. But I'm not sure which article you're referring to. But I don't know of any restriction when it comes to the village engaging or investing in mining in their community. We've seen through the low carbon development strategy, through the payment of carbon credit money to the communities, many of them have used their revenue to invest in mining, to invest in value added in the logging sector, to invest in ecotourism, for example, to invest in honey production, many of them agroforestry, many of them have invested in alternative economic activities other than agriculture in their community. So I'm not sure which article, but I don't know any restriction when it comes to um, how much they should invest. As a matter of fact, we don't micromanage that. And if you may permit me just a minute or so,
I
once that money, once that money from the LCDS, and I can tell you that some villages receive as much as 35 million Guyana dollars annually for the last 3 years. So some villages are in receipt over the last 3 years of over $100 million. And what we said to them is that the Toshao and the leaders of the community must sit and meet with the villagers and decide together as a village what project they would like to engage in, what economic project they would want to invest in. So that is the procedure. And then this decision of that meeting to us, and based on the recommendation coming from the villagers and the village leaders, then that is approved. So we actually, as government, don't dictate to those communities what they should invest in and what they should not. But what we do is that we will provide guidance and advice to them because some investments may not be the best, while there may be other opportunities that we think that they can actually look at. So we often advise, but we don't dictate.
Yeah, that's a useful update there. I think the article had mentioned a hidden law that had that restriction. So maybe it was so hidden that it was ignored. So your update is timely. The other question I have is related to manganese. Have they started production?
Yeah, production manganese production started about 2 years ago. I think this is the third year that we're producing manganese now. You would recall we produced manganese in the I think it's the 50s,
Yeah.
sometime then. So in 2022, yes, I'm correct. 2022, we started the production of manganese. The company has been actively engaged in exploration while they're producing because we want to ensure that there are enough resources there to take us way into the future. The mineral inventory, as I mentioned earlier, the project that is ongoing, where we will update our mineral inventory, that will significantly help us to determine whether there are more deposits in Region 1 or elsewhere, and give us a clear indication of the life of mine for manganese and how long Guyana would be able to produce manganese. But yes, we're producing right now.
Well, that's a welcome statement there. 2 years ago, but I looked everywhere for production statistics and I could not find any statistics,
Okay.
including in Bank of Guyana annual report. They're, they're mentioned in a in a half sentence that they have manganese ore, but they did not quantify anything for the readership.
Okay, yes. Let me see if I can probably find the production figures for you before we close. But we've been producing. This is the third year that we've been producing manganese in Region One. That is the Matthews Ridge area.
But why the Bank of
Uh,
Guyana is not publishing it?
I
Well,
think they might be short staffed.
that I would have to check. I would have to check that, but it should, because if you listen to the budget speech by Minister Ashni Singh, you would hear him mention manganese production. That I'm sure about because I've been there and I've listened to him. Even though it's 5 6 hours, I've listened to everything that he said, and then we have our budget information too. So I'm sure you will find
All
it
right,
in his budget speech.
right.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ganga,
Yeah.
a final question.
Yes. Okay. So we are having our deposit reserves, like in the case of gold, it's 14.3 million troy ounces. In the case of bauxite, 300 million tons of ores that we have there. Then we have manganese, 30 million tons. We have the corresponding exports. We've exported 990 million in gold, that close to 1 billion. That's a gold plus the diamonds, 1 billion. But when I look at the government take in terms of non-tax revenue, which includes royalties. So the royalty rates on our minerals must be very, very low, because the total amount of non-tax revenue amounts to just 4%. 4% of total revenue, not GDP or anything. I'm not scaling with those ridiculous numbers. Just go just book values here. 4% of revenue is non-tax revenue, which means that all the other sectors will be overtaxed. 96% tax burden they will have to bear. We need to increase. What do you think? We increase our non-tax revenue by increasing the royalty rates?
We we have been
Mm.
we have been faced with a number of requests actually by the foreign companies in particular to reduce royalty rate, which our government has hold strong on, and to say that we are not going to reduce the royalty rate. Our royalty rate is 5 plus 3%, gold that is. And if you look at that is with foreign companies. If you compare it with other countries, it is quite reasonable, I would say. Obviously, if we can get more, it's better for the country and the people. But when you compare it, and you can go a quick check online, you will see the different royalty rates around the world. Ours 8%, 5 plus 3, especially that gold price is so high now. So it's something that we can always look at, especially with the other minerals. I know um, the royalty on sand and loom and aggregate and so is a bit low. But as I mentioned to you earlier, these are all Guyanese investors, Guyanese operators. So one of the position of our government, the PPP Civic
Mm.
government, has always been not to add extra burden on our people, especially as I mentioned, Guyanese operators or businesses. That is why we haven't increased. Like some people have been saying, the rates and taxes in the villages are very low, and I'm sure you're aware of that. In some villages, they pay $2,000, $3,000 Guyana dollars annually as rates and taxes. We have resisted the call to increase taxes. We have said clearly that we're not going to increase taxes because we don't want to add burden to our people. As a matter of fact, we're trying to reduce costs for people and to reduce taxes in some
All
cases.
right.
But when it comes to
And
foreign
just one quick point there. The cost reduction is in terms of the fuel. They already got a huge business benefit there. I think
there's no tax on fueling yet. There is no VAT on
tourists.
equipment or machinery. There is no VAT on lube. We've
All
taken out
right.
the tributary tax. So we've been working, especially with Guyanese miners and Guyanese loggers, Guyanese operators in the quarrying sector. We have been trying to incentivize and to encourage them to invest rather than to increase taxation and penalties on them. But the foreign investors, we can always relook at some point in time. But at the same time, you want to still keep Guyana as an attractive investment destination, not to sell out our resources, but to make it attractive and for it to be a win-win situation when it comes to foreign investors coming to Guyana. And I'll give you a quick example. The large-scale mine that I spoke of that is being built right now, the cost of that building that mine is 880 million US dollars. Now, I doubt it, and I hope that at some point in time we can have Guyanese company being engaged in large scale mining. But as it is now, it is pretty difficult for any Guyanese miner to invest 880 million US dollars in a large scale mine. So it's a balancing act. We have to look at the other benefits that come to the country
Mhm.
because that
Uh,
company, for example, is going to employ 1,500 Guyanese. So it means that 1,500 of our
Right,
people, especially our
Minister,
indigenous
we were
people,
out of time,
would
but
gain.
I just want you to comment on one thing. In the Economist, which is a world-renowned journal, they said they said Guyana run the risk. I don't know if you read the article. It came out that Guyana is likely to catch a dreaded Dutch disease. You there?
Now we have seen many
Did you hear?
international analysts and all sorts of people who have overnight became experts in economics, in oil and gas, and in everything else, predicting Guyana's future. But I don't think those some of those people have ever visited Guyana, as a matter of fact. Some people do it because they seek out relevance. Some people do it because of other reasons. But sometimes we don't bother too much with some of these analysis that is being thrown out there because we know what is happening in Guyana. It's totally different here. We have said it from the start, from the beginning, that we have learned from the mistakes made by other countries, and that is why tonight we are speaking so much of mining and logging to an extent and value added in these sectors, and not about oil and gas only. Not about oil and gas. As a matter of fact, we haven't spoken about oil and gas. Agriculture has been expanding. Ecotourism, I mentioned the Amerindian communities and being engaged in that. So sometimes you gotta be in Guyana to understand what is happening
Yeah.
and
All
not
right.
somewhere
Thank you.
write
Thank
a
you,
nice.
Minister. Professor Budi, your last point or question?
Minister, what are the ministry's top priorities on the mining sector in 2025 and beyond? The reason I'm asking this question, I believe that you have an extremely good chance of winning the next elections, right? Because of the proven records of your government. So, are you planning ahead? Maybe in your manifesto, you're going to have some things about the mining sector?
Definitely, because we have made a commitment that we're going to continue to grow the productive, traditional productive sectors, and the focus will not be only on oil and gas. So, obviously, definitely, you will see there is something for every single sector in our manifesto. I mentioned the mineral inventory, the mapping exercise that's being done. That is medium long term. That will benefit the sector for years to come. We have so many incentives. One of the main focus will be the allocation or the making land accessible, mining land, which will come as a result of this mineral mapping. and making those land accessible. That is to continue maintaining the infrastructure so that miners can actually access their land, to work with the miners on making mining safer, to increase the recovery rate, because for small miners, the recovery rate is way below what it is probably. It will be tremendous help for the miners, small miners especially. So those are some of the immediate, medium-term, long-term plans that we have for the mining sector. But we
What
are
about
going to
what
continue
about digital tools and leveraging data for oversight and
looking at,
efficiency?
one is using different technology when it
Mhm,
comes to exploration,
mhm,
prospecting, and also in extracting the gold from the ore. Because once we can use better technology, we'll increase the recovery rate. So when I spoke of increasing recovery rate and
mhm.
finding alternative to mercury that is safe to the environment, it speaks also to the different technologies that are available. So increasing the recovery rate is critical for the mining sector, especially the small and medium scale.
Tara?
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. Shamiza, have any questions for the Minister?
We do have a few questions for the minister. And our
Oh,
first question comes from Mr. Azim Ali. He says, recently on two occasions, I saw GGMC police is going to miners' camp and told them they have to close their operations when these miners show they have documents.
Well, I don't know of any specific incident where mines officers will go and shut down a camp if they have documents, but I would encourage that individual to reach out to me personally or to send the information directly, because only then I can deal with it. But I don't think officers will just go and shut down a mining camp. And it's not only documents. You got to check for safety. You got to check for following the other regulations. So it's not only about showing a document, but ensuring that mining is being done properly and safe. And I'll give you a quick example. We shut down some mining, maybe that's what you're speaking of, in 4 Miles Region 1, where we shut down some legitimate mining operation. They had the documents, but they were doing direct discharge into the creek. There were no settling pond. They were discharging the wastewater directly into the creek, which was contaminating the water that is being used by villagers upriver, downriver, as you consider it. So we had complaints from those villagers that the water is, the turbidity or the water is polluted. And it was as a result of miners just directly discharging the waste into the creek rather than setting up a settling pond or a tailings pond, which is part of the regulation, which is part of the requirement of mining. So yes, you can have your documents, but there can be other infractions as to why a mines officer will close off the operation until you fix it or put it right. So maybe it's one of those instances, or they can always reach out to me if it is unfairly done.
Perfect. And this is more of a concern, and it's coming from Jillian Lindy. It says a lot of people from Region 9 is complaining that a lot of Brazilians are illegally mining in Madrudi. What is being done to stop this? Well,
There, there, there is no Brazilian being that there is no Brazilian that's mining illegally in Marudi. I can tell you that safely. Now, why I say that is because we have a list of Guyanese miners who legitimately mine in Marudi, but they partner with Brazilian investors, which I know of. They have partnered with the Brazil, but there is no Brazilian miner on that list, and there is no Brazilian landowner in that area. It is 40 Guyanese miners who have indeed brought Brazilian investors that have invested with them, and some of them are working with them. From time to time, we carry out operation with immigration, with the police, to ensure that who is not registered to be there, that they should not be there, and we deport them or we send them away. So there's an ongoing exercise to do that. But I can tell you, because we have a GGMC post there where officers are based there, police are based at the checkpoint. So there is no illegal mining by Brazilians in Marudi, but there are Brazilian investors working along with the very Guyanese Region 9 miners in Marudi. What we've had is complaints in some Amerindian communities of Brazilians mining in those communities because of the closeness to the border. But when we do find out, they had an agreement with the village, but maybe because the agreement went sour, or somebody did not fulfill their responsibility, then we are notified and then we deal with it. But whenever we get a complaint, I can tell you in Region 9, especially when regards to illegal mining by Brazilians, we respond immediately because those wetlands are protected, and we have a task to ensure that there is no mining on the wetland, especially in North Rupununi.
Thank you, Minister. Now, this question is coming directly from me. Uh, Come September, and PPP will win the elections. What is top priority for your administration? What is something that you have to get done? That's top priority for you.
All right, so I would say continuity. That's the first thing because we have done a lot over the last 5 years. Guyana has really transformed. It has really changed when it comes to education, healthcare, infrastructure, jobs for people, development in the natural resources sector, whether it's oil and gas, is mining, is forestry, quarrying. We have seen tremendous improvement, tremendous success over the last 5 years. So the first thing is continuing that and ensuring that we offer enough opportunities to Guyanese. And that is why we passed the local content legislation because we want Guyanese to ensure to benefit that they are part of every single sector, including the oil and gas sector. So continuity and ensuring that Guyanese benefit from all sectors. Well, I'm not saying that we're closing the door from foreign investors or investment. We do need foreign investors, but whenever foreign investors come for investment come to Guyana, it must be a win-win situation, or they can partner or join together with Guyanese businesses and work together like they're doing in the oil and gas sector. So one is continuity, ensuring that we offer opportunities, more opportunities to Guyanese and the Guyanese private sector.
Perfect. Great answer. Well, thank you so much. I will now ask you for your closing remarks.
So let me thank you, Shamiza, and of course the panelists. I think we had a very good discussion, and the natural resources sector is very critical in Guyana. We contribute significantly to the development and well bringing in revenue for development in our country. And to say that, like you and like you would have mentioned, we are very confident, the PUP Civic, we're very confident that we will win the elections on September 1st, 2025, with the support of our people. We are not complacent, but we are confident. And we are going to campaign based on our track record. And we are going to compare that with what happened in 2015, 2020. And once we are victorious, as I mentioned, we are going to continue development that's taking place. We're going to continue building out the new modern Guyana that all of us wanted to see and we want to leave for the future generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panel tonight. Thank you, Dr. Tara, and to our honorable guests. Thank you for taking the time to be here. To all of our viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to be here this evening. Until next time, I am your host, Shamiza Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good
Thank you
evening.
very
Thank you.
much, Minister.